Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, your home for weekly information and inspiration to help you get the graduate job of your dreams.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Graduate Job Podcast with your host, James Curran. The Graduate Job Podcast is your weekly home for all things related to helping you on your journey to finding that amazing job. Each week I bring together the best minds in the industry, speaking to leading authors, entrepreneurs, coaches and bloggers who bring decades of experience into a bite-sized weekly 30-minute show. Put simply, this is a show I wish I had a decade ago when I graduated. This week I speak with Lis McGuire, professional CV writer and the founder of Giraffe CVs, as we delve into all aspects of creating an amazing CV. We go from how to get the CV writing process started, through to the use of language, top hints and tips, and even down to the specific font to use. If you're creating a new CV, or if your existing one needs a bit of an update, then this is a show for you.
Hello and welcome to the 10th edition of the Graduate Job Podcast. I'm very excited today to be speaking to Lis McGuire. Lis is a professional CV writer and the founder of Giraffe CVs. She's over 15 years experience gained from delivering interview-winning CVs to help clients to advance their careers. Lis is a CV guru, and what she doesn't know isn't worth knowing. Lis, welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast.
Well, thank you, James. That's a very nice introduction. Hi, I'm delighted to be here, and it's really exciting to be on the 10th episode of your podcast. Happy days.
Thank you. So I've given listeners a brief introduction, but before we jump into our topic today of CVs, would you like to introduce yourself properly and tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do and what your business does?
Sure. Well, I'm Lis McGuire and I'm the founder and CV writer at Giraffe CVs. Giraffe CVs is a CV writing company that helps professionals at all levels, from graduate to senior C-level executives, to aim high, stand tall and get spotted through a great CV. So I set up the company, probably 2003 or 2004 now, and it's really grown. It's been fantastic. So I'm a home-based business, and I started with really people in the local area who needed a better CV to enhance their career prospects, and it's grown and snowballed really, so that I now work with people all over the world at all sorts of levels in all kinds of different roles, and it's really interesting for me to get to know the kinds of roles that people are doing out there and the kinds of challenges they're coming up against in their career. And what's even better is to know that they are then securing great roles on the basis of their new CV, and then they come back to me and I can help again with their career progression. So it's a really rewarding job and I really enjoy it.
Excellent. So unsurprisingly today we're going to cover the topic of CVs. So starting at the very, very beginning, what is a CV and why is it still relevant in this digital age?
Okay, so a CV is basically your personal marketing document in relation to your career. It summarises the experience you've gained to date and the skills you've gained to date, ideally in light of what you want to do next. So a CV will contain things like your education and qualifications, your experience in terms of working experience, paid and unpaid, and any other relevant information that's going to position you with a potential employer, showing that you're a great fit for your career target.
So today we're going to think about CVs from the position of a recent graduate.
Yeah.
So imagine I'm a recent graduate and I need to update my CV for the first time in probably a couple of years. Where do I start? Where would be the best place to start from in terms of what needs to go onto it and how I need to tailor it?
Okay, well, the thing I'd recommend is actually starting with a blank page, and first of all, get your career target in mind. So really know in your head what kind of role you're going to be applying for, with what employer, and what you hope your career progression to be, and keep these points in mind the whole time when you're writing your CV. Your CV really has to be tailored to your career target. So everything you write on that page has to reflect that goal.
So I've got my blank sheet of paper, and I've got the career in mind, so I'm wanting to go for a graduate job.
Okay.
How do I then structure what are the must-haves that need to go in, the nice-to-haves, and then the things that I should really not put in at all?
Okay, so must-haves, as I mentioned, it's really important that your CV makes it absolutely clear what your target is as a graduate. So the first thing I'd recommend is including a headline to flag your preferred direction. So a headline is kind of similar to your LinkedIn headline, but perhaps a bit snappier because you have 120 characters on LinkedIn, but just make it absolutely clear who you are and what your career target is from your headline at the very top of the CV, so that someone reading it understands why they're reading it, basically. So you, as a graduate, probably you don't have the experience to be able to call yourself by a particular job title, for example, sales and marketing professional, but you could use a headline that said career target and then indicate your job role afterwards. For example, career target business analyst, or careers target telesales manager, or whatever it is. But basically, make it clear right at the top of the CV what you're going to do. Next up, you really need a compelling CV profile, and I think we're going to touch on this a bit later on, but you need to add a kind of executive summary of your CV that shows your skills, your experience, and your career aspirations to the reader, and flag up right at the top of the CV what the recruiter needs to know. And this will avoid them having to sort of scurry through the CV and trying to find out who the professional you is and what the skills and experience you have are, and what you want to do with the things you've got, with your assets. I'd actually recommend writing the profile last. It's kind of easier once you've got all your other sections in place. Mm-hmm. As a graduate, you'll need to present your education up front, because it probably is your most relevant deliverable that you're going to be able to bring to a new employer. It's been your main focus, your education, and it's been your main platform for achievement so far in your career in your career in education. So unless you've been in an employed role and it's been relevant since graduating, I'd probably put your education right after your profile on your CV. If your education is relevant to your career target, then you might want to expand a little and detail the kind of elective modules that you've undertaken in your degree, and talk about your dissertation or thesis, and just show the substance in your education as relevant for your target role. Next up, I really want to stress that it's important to make the most of your experience. Now, as a graduate, it's unlikely that you've got acres and acres of experience in the traditional sense from paid employment, but that's okay. I often find that graduates underestimate what they have achieved so far, although it's not in an actual job, if you like. But they can detail internships, unpaid work experience, degree-based research projects, and any extracurricular activities that can really enhance your credibility in the recruiter's eyes. So don't underestimate what you've done so far. If you showcase it in the right way, it's going to pique a recruiter's interest.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. And when I've seen lots of graduate CVs, they tend to overinflate the bits that I'm not really interested in.
Yeah, exactly. It has
underinflate the bits that I'm interested in. So they'll talk about their degree at length, and also the different aspects of it, which have no direct correlation to the job that they're applying for, but they'll underplay any teamwork or any paid work experience or anything for me that shows transferable skills.
That's right, exactly. And they can come from unlikely sources. You know, you may think sometimes if you're targeting a role that's directly related to your degree, you might have actually done a really interesting research project, or actually been involved in something really fun and practical. For example, civil engineers, you might have been involved in one of the constructionarium projects, in which they replicate real life fantastic buildings, like what's it called, the Gherkin in London, and they build them on a smaller scale. And what amazing experience! It's like a real project to put on your CV, and that can be brought to life as well through LinkedIn, where you could feature it as a project, and you could add pictures of you as you're progressing your build.
So sticking with the education aspects, how far would you recommend that people go back in terms of listing educational things? So obviously university, but then A-levels,
yeah,
GCSEs.
It really depends. Sometimes people have done a lot of tertiary education and they might have masters, a PhD, and so on. So it does depend on how much education you've got, but definitely not primary school, 100%.
Yep.
I would sometimes start with GCSEs if you've got an undergraduate degree like a BSc or so on. But if you've got a master's, you might just want to feature your first degree and your master's rather than going to the A-levels. But it depends how much you've got to say on your CV. I mean, you might want to add your A-levels in as something to say, but it will be a prerequisite for the next stage of education, so not always necessary.
And just on that point there of depends how much you've got to say, are you a one-page or a two-page kind of?
I try to tend to produce a two-page, providing that you can find some substance to fill it. I mean, for a school leaver, a one page is absolutely fine, but if you've done some part-time work experience, if you've done a few university projects, if you've been a member of, say, a society or represented your department at university, there's some things that you can draw out there that are going to show transferable skills to your reader. So I would advocate a two-page CV. It doesn't have to fill the whole 2 pages densely, but it's a nice presentation and it can work. I mean, I try and get, if you've got some relevant work experience, on page 1, I try and get your headline, your profile, your education, and then start with some experience. And I would always put relevant experience on page 1 of the CV. So, for example, if you're going into a related field to your degree, then I'd recommend putting any degree projects or relevant internships or work experience on page 1, to start on page 1, going on to page 2.
Going for the more functional and skills-based approach as opposed to just chronological.
I guess. I mean, in each section, I advocate that you go for a reverse chronological approach. So with professionals of all levels, I would break your experience, providing that you've got 2 types of experience rather than you've been in the whole same kind of field the whole of your career. So I would put relevant experience up on page 1 and other experience to follow, and I would go for a reverse chronological format within that section. So present your most recent experience first and going back through the years.
No, that makes sense. And what would you say separates a good CV from an average CV from a poor CV? Okay,
a great CV will really convey a passion for the career target. It will show information that's tailored to that particular opportunity that you're going for. It will tell the reader what they need to know at a glance, so an in-depth read isn't required straight away for them to confirm that this is someone that they'd like to get to know. It needs to be really well presented, and it ideally needs to have substance. And by this I mean tangible examples which show that you've got the skills and potential to do the job and to progress. So wherever possible, quantify your achievements. And it might seem a bit funny to do at first, but you get used to it. People want to know the scale of what you've achieved. So even if you've got a part-time retail job, you might want to talk about the volume of customers that you're serving, or how you've contributed to meeting KPIs, any promotions that you've delivered, and how you've performed against those targets, and so on.
No, that's a really good point. And I liked in your post online on your blog where you talk about how does each line of your CV pass the so what and the who says test.
Yeah, that's right. So what says who. That's right.
Yeah.
It seems harsh, and actually it seems a little rude if you're saying that to a customer sometimes. But you've got to try and be objective and read it through the eyes of someone who doesn't know you and doesn't, has no care for whether they should really hire you or not. They've got a stack of CVs and they're looking at what you've written and thinking, well, why should I care about that? You've got to, and then try and add some substance to each line that indicates why they should care, what the result was. and what you achieved, what your impact was.
No, completely. And when I review CVs and application forms, so what is one of the things often written in the margin of you need to really make sure that each line is adding value and is giving some benefit to the reader. So it's telling them what you're good at, or it's telling them what you've done. And as you mentioned, for the say to bit is being able to quantify it in terms of I increased sales by X amount or improved efficiency by so much percentage is very powerful.
Exactly. And going back to your question of what differentiates a great CV from a poor CV, I'd say that graduates don't tend to make all of the same mistakes that professionals generally do, because they've had a complete focus on their CV, but there are still some issues that I see, and they're things like what I call meek and mild syndrome. So a graduate might feel that they've not really achieved anything yet to promote to the world. So you get a kind of bland document that doesn't really have any impact, and it doesn't stand out from any other document either. So I understand people don't want to promote themselves without having the substance to back it up, but at the same time, you've really got to make the best of what you've achieved. And if you feel that you haven't got the experience that you need, then go out and grab it, because there are plenty of volunteering opportunities out there. Actually, even this morning, I had an email from the local park saying they were looking for people to volunteer on a once-a-week basis to do some conservation and improvement projects. And things like that are great to get practical experience and demonstrate transferable skills. So, and there'll always be things that graduates overlook. So you might have had a job, but overlooked a project that you've done within that job, or overlooked something that you did on a free basis that you're just not drawing out in the right way on your CV. So there'll be more to your experience than you think.
Completely agree again. And when I've been working with people on their application forms for graduate schemes, when they've got to, in 200 words say, when have you worked in a team, or when can you demonstrate this competency? And you'll sit with them initially and they'll be like, oh, well, I've got nothing to say here. Yeah. You say, well, you just work through it on a step-by-step basis of, well, did you do any teamwork at university? Oh, yeah, of course I did. Well, okay. Did you manage the team at any point? Did you, did you take the lead? Did you start to set up the meetings? Did you try to organise people? And oh, yeah, I did that. Well, you just need to work through and think about it logically. And there's examples everywhere, as you mentioned. So even the example there of the gardening, if you're working by yourself, you're showing, you're a self-starter, you're showing initiative, you'd be able to work without supervision. So there's always competencies that you can draw out from every experience.
Definitely, and sports as well are a major thing. I mean, if you've been in a sports team and you've been a long-standing member, you'll have seen ups and downs and all sorts of challenges to overcome. So it might not seem a natural thing to highlight, but you can definitely use those kind of experiences to demonstrate those competencies. I've got two boys, and they're both in rugby teams, and it's really fantastic experience for them. One son is in a consistently winning team, and one son is in a team that has had a less than fantastic track record. But when I look at it, it's my boy that's got has been through the tough times with his team that's probably developed the most from that experience.
Yeah, no, it's from losing that you tend to learn more than from winning. Yeah,
definitely. So it's a really valuable experience. And I mean, you don't necessarily need to be the captain of the team, but anything you've done, if you've helped to organise a tour, or if you've helped to fundraise, they're all valuable experiences that you can draw out on your CV.
Now, a question for you, a bone of contention here at Graduate Job Podcast headquarters. Do you recommend writing in the first person, such as I have experience in, or in the third person, so James has experience in?
Right, so the trend seems to be and I agree, I've done both in my time because I've been running a long time now, but for the past probably year or so, it's been the smart third person. So it's kind of not saying I am or James is, it's saying, I'm trying to think how you might say it, but you might say a committed graduate who has recently finished a master's degree at the University of Cambridge, or at Cambridge University, something like that.
No, I agree. I think the first person people just tend to have I did this, I did
exactly.
that.
I mean, it's more dynamic. The language is more dynamic, and especially when you get down to your work experience, if you use power verbs, things like identified, realised, collaborated, delivered, generated, those kind of words, it just makes it seem more impactful. So your profile, I would definitely write in the smart third person, so taking off I am or James is and just launching into it. And I'd use power verbs to start your bullets in your experience section.
Sticking with language then, are there any other, you talked about power verbs, is there any other language that you'd recommend people don't use at all?
I try and make sure it comes from the heart. So don't get bogged down in CV speak. When you're writing your CV and you've got a draft together, try reading it out, and then you'll see what seems natural to you. Don't use language that you wouldn't necessarily use when you're speaking, if you see what I mean. And also, reading it aloud is a really good way to identify anything that doesn't quite flow right, or a word repetition, because sometimes your eyes just don't see it when you're reading on the screen or a printed version. And another tip, actually, relating to that, I now have a writing chair and an editing chair, so I will write at my desk, obviously, but then I'll print out a document and go and sit in another place and just mark it up with pencil. And I find that it works really well to spot any inconsistencies or small errors and so on.
No, definitely, and that's so important. We spoke in an early episode with Sarah Stimson, who was in charge of a PR internship scheme, the Taylor Bennett Foundation. It's an amazing scheme with not too many places to get, and they get hundreds and hundreds and thousands of applications. And she said one single mistake on the CV or application form, and it's straight in the bin.
Yeah, it just says attention to detail is not what it should be. So I really agree with that.
A top tip I found is actually to go through the CV backwards.
Oh, yeah.
If you're looking for sort of formatting, so full stops at the end of lines, etc., is to work at the bottom right, and then work up backwards. As you mentioned, your eye just catches on things that it doesn't pick up on when you're reading it.
That's right, and definitely print a copy as well as just viewing it on screen, because you can see how it looks on and off screen there, and it might seem a little different.
Going through now, quick fire, some typical CV questions. Referees. What's your opinion on referees, whether to bother putting them on or just have available if required? I
think actually you don't need to say that references are available on request, because a recruiter or employer assumes that that's a given. If they're going to want to take you on as an employee, they're going to be able to request references. So instead, I would recommend getting yourself on LinkedIn, getting your profile together, building your network, getting your connections, and then getting some recommendations. And then you can put your LinkedIn profile onto your CV. Interested parties can click through and straight away see that people are willing to stand up and say that you've got the experience and skills that you say you've got.
That's an excellent idea. I know it was really difficult personally to try and get in touch with my university lecturers, who were completely flaky when I was trying to get a reference from them. These people just disappeared over the summer months. So having that reference on LinkedIn and available, would save a lot of hassle.
That's right. And references on LinkedIn can be from all sorts of sources. So yeah, it's a great idea to get a reference from your lecturer. But again, if you've worked in a team on a particular research project or practical project, then if you've got other people in the team who are willing to say how you perform, then get them to recommend you too. Think outside of the box in terms of the people you ask for recommendations. It can be anyone that you work with in a professional context, and don't dismiss any of your experience. If you've had a part-time job that supported you whilst you've been going through university, then you've still performed in that role, and get people to say so. It was, later on, as your career target changes, you can edit these things to ensure that the experience and recommendations you feature are more reflective. But for now, it's the experience you've got, it's what you're starting with, and make the most of it.
I loved one of your recent posts talking about the best way to use a file name to make sure that it's impactful when you save it. Could you just explain to listeners what you meant by that?
Yeah, just it's an underestimated, underused piece of CV real estate. So you can do a lot with your CV file name. I mean, the worst mistake to make is calling your CV something like cv.doc, which of course makes perfect sense on your own computer, but once it goes to someone else's computer who's got hundreds and hundreds of CVs, chances are someone else has had that bright idea too. So you really need to make sure that it has your name clearly on it. That's the first thing. So something like, for me, it might be Lis McGuire CV, and I could even add CV writer. And straight away, you know my name, you know this is my career document, you know what I do. And I would reflect that last part, the CV writer part, to reflect your career target. So if you were going for a business analyst role, put business analyst at the end of it, and it makes it a very clear impression from the outset. That's the first thing someone's going to see in their inbox is your kind of application email and your CV right there, and they're going to do something with that. So it's their first impression. Make the most of it.
Naturally, my CV is whiter than white in terms of accuracy, but I've been told that people sometimes stretch the truth a little bit on their CVs. What's your thoughts on maybe tweaking the odd aspect of your CV to make it sound more impressive?
I would just stick to the truth. It's always going to come back and bite you on the bum. So just stick with the facts. I mean, make the most of what you've done, and don't be shy in promoting the achievements you've had. But don't try and fudge dates. Don't try and say you've worked somewhere you haven't. It just can come out. I mean, you've only got to watch that episode of The Apprentice every year to know.
Yeah, that's true.
To know the pitfalls. So don't do it.
What's your advice for the interests bit at the end of a CV? I mean, I've seen some really bad ones which tend to come across a bit like a bad dating profile, with people saying, in my spare time I like socialising with friends, but I also like staying in and watching a DVD and having a bottle of wine. It
just makes you sound boring, doesn't it? It's I think only feature your interest if they're truly interesting. So if they're a talking point, recently I had a customer who had a really kind of quite corporate job, but was an absolutely amazing musician in their spare time and had toured around the world and just played to a really high level. So that was a really fantastic interest and talking point to put on their CV. But just saying interest for the sake of saying interest is a no-no. I mean, it just comes across as white noise, so I wouldn't recommend it. But if you've got something interesting to say that shows your skills and competencies, for example, sport, or if you've helped a charity, done some volunteering, anything like that that's going to big you up, make you seem like a better candidate, then include it. But don't feel compelled to, and definitely don't just add the same interest that the man next to you is going to add, because it will just make you blend in rather than stand out.
No, I agree, but if you can put something down that you are interested in, or that is, you've done that's special, it's an amazing talking point and just a way to start to build rapport with with the interviewer, whether it's which team you support in football, if they're a rival fan, or if you run marathons and you find out that they also run marathons, and you can,
and the most
start that conversation.
The most unusual things can spark a conversation. So don't overlook what your interests are. I mean, it might seem routine to you, but for the next person, it might be really, really interesting. So definitely include those.
Thinking finally about formatting, what are some of the basic formatting mistakes that people tend to make, whether it's overuse of bullet points or bold or tiny fonts? I
would say that sometimes it's a really boring format, like it doesn't have impact. Maybe they've used a template that's just a bit dull, really. Another common thing is people trying to cram too much in. I often get asked, can we just widen the margins? And you're thinking of the poor reader who's looking at this densely populated page and thinking, I've got to read that, or I really should read that to find out what I need to know. And it's just it's just not polite, really, I think. So I would give plenty of white space. Make sure your formatting's consistent throughout. So give clear headings and make sure they're formatted the same. Don't overdo it. Don't go crazy on the formatting. So don't use lots of different fonts and lots of different styles, but just make the whole thing look as if it's gelled together and nicely presented. So, and also print it out to check it looks good on and off screen as well.
Are there any fonts Times New Roman's the classic one. We've got lots of font chat here, it's very exciting. But, Times New Roman's a classic one, or would you recommend, any, you don't want wingdings, obviously.
No,
but,
definitely. What is it? Not Comic Sans. Comic Sans. Yep. That's one to avoid. I mean, just make sure that the font's going to appear as you see it on their screen. So use something that's quite widely accepted. I mean, Arial's a good standard, although some people can think it's quite boring, but it's easy to read, it's clear, it's going to translate no matter where you are. You're going to be able to read an Arial document. And I've got a blog on CV fonts, but they can change slightly. I mean, sometimes see people use Calibri and Verdana. Times New Roman is a little traditional, I feel, but yeah, Arial is quite a good standard to go with.
Excellent. And for all you font pedants out there, I'd recommend checking out the article on Liz's blog for as much font information as you can handle.
Thanks.
So now we've got an amazing CV. It's all ready. It's looking brilliant. It's got no punctuation errors in it or anything. What's then the next step? Would you recommend either email or sending it? And
I'd recommend responding in line with their requirements. So if you're responding to a job advert, then perhaps you need to follow what they've asked for. So if they ask you to send it in Word, send it in Word. If they ask for Word and PDF, send it as such. If you're applying to a job off spec, you can email, but you might also wish to send. That's a way to stand out. But I definitely recommend finding the person's name who you're wanting to contact and making your letter personal to them. It's respectful and polite, and it shows that you're really truly interested in the job opportunity.
And last week I spoke with Alistair Patterson, CEO of Digital Shadows, and he said he was amazed by the number of times that people got the name of his company wrong.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Basic stuff. Make sure you get the name of the person you're sending it to right, and also make sure that the name of the company is right as well. So moving now, Liz, on to the quickfire question round. So firstly, what one book would you recommend that listeners read?
Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit off-piste and not recommend a book. Is that okay? But I've actually got something different that is on the reading line. And I'd really, really, truly recommend Reid Hoffman's Slideshare presentation, The 3 Secrets of Highly Successful Graduates. Now, Hoffman he's the co-founder of LinkedIn, and he does quite a lot of presentations, and as you might expect. But this Slideshare is targeted to graduates who don't really feel ready for the world of work, and he shares 3 things that successful professionals eventually figure out about their careers. And it's really, really moving and really on the ball. So I definitely recommend checking it out. If you put into Google Reid Hoffman Slideshare presentation for graduates, it will come up and you'll get a lot out of it.
Excellent. And all the links will be in the show notes. So I'll definitely link to that. And it sounds really interesting.
Fantastic.
So next, what internet resource would you recommend for the listeners to help with their job hunt?
Again, going a little bit off-piste, I've just found a tool called Plotter, Plotr, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's kind of like a careers questionnaire where it asks you all about your interests and what you like, what you expect from your career, what you really thrive on. And it's quite an in-depth process. I mean, a bit more than when I was at school, when it came out to do you want to be a hairdresser or a fireman? It's really amazing, and it's actually targeted at younger people. I think they target it at 16 to 24s. But at the end of this process, it takes at least an hour. It's quite an in-depth process, but it gives you some suggestions of careers, and it tells you it's 100% sure that this is a career for you, or it's 99% sure that this career is something that you would really, really enjoy. And I went through the process and I found it really inspiring, actually. And it came up for me with editor, which is handy because that's basically the job I'm doing. But it also came up with some creative jobs that perhaps I'd really like to pursue in future. Things like web animation and designer, things that I really enjoy because I like the creative aspect of what I do now. So I've recommended it to some older clients as well as graduates, and they've really enjoyed the process too. So Plotter, Plotr, check it out. It's a great resource.
Super. And actually, in the 10 episodes, that's now the second time that someone's recommended that. So David Schindler, in the episode Transitioning from University to Work, recommended that tool.
Oh, fantastic.
And following the episode, I went online and did it. So if you check out the show notes for Transitioning from University to Work, I think it's episode 5, then you'll see my results, which were I was probably 100% suited to being a university professor. But as Liz said, it's a really useful tool if you're in a position where you're not really sure on where to take your career and some of the opportunities available to you. Spend an hour, answer the questions as truthfully as you can, and see the results. It's very interesting.
Exactly, and it also gives you really useful advice on how to pursue that career as well and gain the experience you need. So a top find.
And finally, Liz, what one tip would you recommend to people that they can implement now on their job hunt?
I'd say it's about confidence. Find your inner confidence when you're writing your CV and project a confident voice. You really need to believe in yourself and what you've achieved to date and what you can achieve in the future, because if you don't come across confidently on your CV as if you believe in yourself, then it's hard for someone else to find you convincing. So draw on your self-belief and put that into your CV.
As I say, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Liz, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. But before we close, where and how can people best get in touch with you and the work that you do?
Okay, well, I'm quite a prolific content creator, so you can find me on the web. I've got a weekly blog at Giraffe CVs on all aspects of CV writing and career tips. And I've also got a podcast, the CV Confidence Coach podcast on iTunes. But you can get in touch with me via the usual social media on Twitter at Giraffe CVs, on Facebook Giraffe CVs again, and I've also got a Google Plus account if you're a fan. So I'd be delighted for you to get in touch, and feel free to email or contact me by one of those means.
Excellent, Liz. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, James. It's been a pleasure.
My thanks again there to Lis McGuire. We went slightly over the half-hour mark this week, but when the font chat comes, you've just got to run with it. In terms of my key takeaways from this episode, the first is that your CV doesn't have to be good. It needs to be great. In the job market today, it needs to strongly convey your skills, experiences, job goals, be personalised specifically to the job you're applying for, and all without a spelling mistake or punctuation mistake. And it needs to be within a maximum of 2 pages. Now, don't underestimate the work that is required to get it to this level. As such, if you're struggling, go out and get help. Liz offers a free CV review on her website at Giraffe CVs, so check that out for more details. A professional CV is a great investment, or one that will pay for itself many, many, many times over, especially if it helps you get your ideal job. The second key thing for me was one of the very first points that Liz made. Before you even start your CV, have in mind what is the ultimate aim and goal of the CV. What job, role, industry are you aiming at? Generic CVs just don't cut the mustard, so you need to be focused and have this goal in mind with every line that you write. In fact, before you even start your CV, write down that goal, whether it's getting an internship with a fashion company or a job with a bank. Write it down and keep it in front of you so that it can keep you on track throughout the whole process. Which neatly leads us on to the third key point. I love Liz's comment that you should ask the powerful question, so what says who, about every line on your CV. Every line, statement and paragraph should have a purpose and be taking you closer to that stated goal. If not, be brutal, take it out, get rid of it, change it. I know it can be painful, put the effort in and you'll stand out from those who can't be bothered, which is going to be the majority. Right, episode 10 can now be added to the finished pile. You can find a full transcript of everything that we've talked about and all the links at graduatejobpodcast.com/CV. Please do get in touch with us on Twitter at GradJobPodcast. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. We'll love you forever, and it also helps other people to find the show. And if you're not already subscribed via iTunes or Stitcher Radio, you need to sort that out. It's the easiest way to get each episode delivered to you for free and to make sure that you don't miss a thing. Join us next week when we speak with author Michael Tafula and cover the topic of procrastination. I hope you've enjoyed the episode today, but more importantly, I hope you use it and apply it. See you next week.